Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 222. On this episode of the podcast, Jen explores why effective communication is an ongoing practice. What, you mean like every day? Whatever happened to just being able to say something once?
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. Most resumes include a line that goes something like this: excellent communication skills. And while that might be true, that line is so overused that it really doesn't mean anything anymore. It's cliche. It's overdone. Let's find out how to prove to a prospective employer that you can communicate effectively right after this.
You've updated your resume, you've sent it out, and you've been selected for an interview. Congratulations. And now you want to get ready, really ready. This is where Careers by Jen can help. We have a comprehensive online course called How to Ace a Job Interview When You Haven't Interviewed in a Long Time. This video-based course is jam-packed with information, advice, and exercises to help you get completely prepared to walk into an interview situation with confidence. From exactly what to prepare in advance, to how to answer common questions, to what questions you might ask the interviewer, and so much more, this course is designed to get you ready. Visit careersbyjen.com and click on Training Resources to see the curriculum, preview a couple of the introductory lessons, and see what others who have taken the course are saying about it. Visit careersbyjen.com and get ready to ace your next interview.
How can you prove to a prospective employer that you are an excellent communicator? And how can you do that beyond just writing that worn-out line on a resume? The answer? By doing it. I know that sounds stupidly simple, but it's not. This podcast, when it was first launched back in 2011, was named Communication Diva. And it was born because I was teaching communications and human relations skills to college students in healthcare. And I didn't have enough time to spend teaching this subject. I was allotted about 30 hours to teach communication skills to college students. And so I wasn't able to do the topic justice. I wasn't able to dip beyond the very surface of the vast topic of communication. And so I thought I would contribute to helping people communicate more effectively in the world beyond my classroom by teaching via a podcast and by bringing in interesting people to help me do that. And so that's how Communication Diva was born. And eventually I realized I was mostly talking about work topics and self-awareness topics and self-growth and improvement topics. And I was targeting people who wanted to get a job, who wanted to love their work, and who wanted to advance their careers. And that is why I rebranded the show in 2017. So it's the same show, same idea. And if you go back past, before 2017, you will see that the show was called Communication Diva, and all of those episodes are still around. And throughout all of these years and all of these episodes, I have maintained that communication skills are not something that you can do, get done, and tick a box about. You can't ever be perfect at them. You can have loads of experience and you can have certificates and degrees in the subject, and you can be a teacher of communication, and you can call yourself an expert, and you can still make massive mistakes. And so effective, clear, excellent communication is an ongoing practice, ongoing until the day we stop communicating. We begin communicating as infants, when a baby is uncomfortable because it's scared, or it's tired, or it's hungry, or it's wet, or it's gassy, or it's lonely, it cries. And most of the time, that communication is very, very effective. A grown-up human will come and do something with that infant to make it feel better. And so very, very early on, we learn that if we communicate, we can affect change. If we cry, if we smile, if we laugh, if we do all these things as we grow, we get response, we get reaction, we communicate. So we communicate all the time. Whether or not we do it effectively is the question. It's actually impossible to be effective 100% of the time, but there's never any harm in trying. Before we jump into how, let's talk about what communication is a little bit more. Basically, communication is an exchange between two people, the sender and the receiver. The sender intends to communicate and sometimes doesn't intend to. We can talk about that in a bit. And the receiver receives a communication, but the receiver doesn't always receive what the sender intends. And this, my friends, is where we get into trouble. What happens between the intention and the reception can make all the difference. So communication is an exchange between two people, verbally, non-verbally, via writing like text or messaging or email or social media, or gasp, that old-fashioned snail mail. I miss mail. Don't you? Do you miss mail? Do you miss getting things in the mail? Sometimes I'll get a card or a note in the mail, and it's just delightful because it shows that someone cares enough to take the time to write by hand. And then after they've written by hand, they have to do all the things that they have to do to get that card into the mail. It's so much more effort than just sending an email or a text, isn't it? So communication can be any of those things. It's an exchange. And what makes it effective versus just good or just communication is this. Simply the accuracy of it. How was it intended and how was it received? That's the difference between effective or excellent communication or just communication, is the accuracy. How well did what was intended get received at the other end? Now, pilots and air traffic controllers have this down pat. There is zero room for communication error in that situation. And so there are ways in which the pilot and the air traffic controller communicate that intentionally leaves no ambiguity and no room for error. So part of that, of course, includes the understanding by all parties that what the air traffic controller says is what the pilot does. Unless there is some kind of emergency or extenuating circumstance happening and the pilot can see something that the controller cannot see, but that is really, really rare. Normally, the air traffic controller is in charge and the pilot has to repeat back what the air traffic controller says, and they use all sorts of codes and call signs and words that are understood by both parties so that there aren't any mistakes. And the same goes for the chain of command in organizations such as law enforcement and firefighting and emergency response teams and the armed forces. There are systems built in so that communication in a dangerous or terrorized or terrifying situation is practiced and is concise and is clear, which is why they actually have drills for this and they practice this. Now, of course, we don't have that in regular life situations and relationships, and so there is a lot more room for misinterpretation and for mistakes to be made and for feelings to be hurt and for conflict to arise when communication is not clear and practiced and concise and direct. Effective communication can be far more challenging for the civilian person because the meaning, the intention is not always what comes across. A lot can get in the way. A couple of those things, body language is one of those things that can get in the way of effective communication. When our body language doesn't match the words that are coming out of our mouths, then we are sending a mixed message and we can completely confuse the receiver. I did a whole podcast a very long time ago with a friend of mine as a guest who is a professional actor, Stefano Giulianetti. And it is episode number 9, if you want to go back all that way, back to year 1. And the episode was all about body language, because as an actor, that's your living. That's what you do. And so body language is key. Maybe you don't want to do something, but you say yes with your words, with your mouth, and yet your entire body is screaming, no, I don't want to do this thing. That would be an ineffective communication. That would make for good comedy if you were doing something in theater, and it was obvious to the audience that you didn't want to do what you were saying yes to. But body language is something that not everyone considers in communication, and it's a very, very important thing. In fact, it's often more accurate than the words that are coming out of your mouth. Your body can give you away, can betray your true intention, and you are less trusted in some cases if your body language is saying something different than what your words are saying. So it's really important to pay attention to body language and to be able to line the body language up with the words that you're saying, especially when we're talking about job search, interview situations, and your job performance, your professionalism in the workplace. So body language is something that can mess up and mix up and muddle up effective communication. So pay attention to that. Another thing that can mess it up is paralanguage. Paralanguage can get in the way of effective communication. The word para means beside or around. So paralanguage includes all sorts of things like inflection, tone of voice, the rate of your speech, the pitch, and the volume. And all of these things can drastically change the meaning of a verbal exchange. So if I'm greeting you in the morning, this is my example. If I'm greeting you in the morning, I can say, hey, or 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 I can say, hey, right? So that's the exact same word coming out of my mouth with 5 very different intentions and communications. Same word, different pitch, different inflection, different tone, and so a very, very different communication using one word. So paralanguage is very, very important. And it is important that you pay attention to your tone of voice, your inflection, how you say something, because you want to make sure that your paralanguage is matching your body language, is matching the words that are coming out of your mouth. This is exhausting, isn't it? Then, another thing that can mess things up is autocorrect. And I can't tell you how many times I've sent a text or a message and the device I was using has auto-corrected what I've written to something bizarre or even embarrassing. So last night from the night I recorded this, I was a guest on a podcast that will be out sometime in the next couple of weeks. It was on a very fun show called Learn Me Something. And I was going to the studio where Aaron and Richard and Alex record their podcast. And I was heading over to the studio, and it's a fair distance away from where I live. And I was asking about parking. And I think my question was, is there parking nearby? And my device auto-corrected the word parking to the word P-A-R-O-E-A-S-U, Parosu, which actually doesn't mean anything. So I don't know what autocorrect was doing. Crazy autocorrect was being weird. It took the word parking and changed it to this paroisu word. And the person I was texting responded saying he was feeling stupid for a few moments because he didn't know what that word meant. Thankfully, I had sent a next message that said something nasty about my phone and autocorrect and properly asked about parking. And he said, oh, good. Because he thought, what does that word mean? So I'm sure this has happened to you, that autocorrect has done goofy things to you, your messages, and has confused people. it has confused me when I've read things that I didn't understand. So with body language and with paralanguage and with autocorrect, not to mention spelling mistakes and grammar if you are writing, or abbreviations that sometimes we're using now, and emojis and things, these are things to consider. How the heck are you supposed to communicate effectively and demonstrate it so that you can prove that you can communicate effectively, rather than just saying that on your resume, rather than just saying, I'm an excellent communicator? Well, that's a good question. And my answer to that, my own question that I posed there, with all of that, how the heck can you prove it? My response is with practice, with awareness, and with intentionality. You need practice, you need awareness, and you need intentionality in order to effectively communicate. Always practice clear and effective communication. You can practice this all the time, everywhere and anywhere you are, on unsuspecting people in your life. They'll never know that you're doing it, but try it. Try to be as precise and as clear as you can be. And I am the first to say it. It's far more work to be an effective communicator than it is to be just a communicator. It's way more work because it takes longer, it takes more effort to be clear and to make sure that what you're sending as the sender is received correctly. But it is worth it. If you want to reduce conflict in your life, if you want to be real about your feelings and what's going on for you, if you want to really be accurate when you put in your resume that you're an effective communicator, or you're a good communicator, or you're a strong communicator, whatever euphemism you want to use, whatever adjective you want to use, if you want to be true to that, then this is going to take some work. And it's worth it though. So practice is very important, and you can practice starting right now with the next person that you see. You can practice. It's very, very good. So that's the first thing. The second thing is awareness. Awareness is key. Paying attention to what your body is doing when you're communicating and to what words are coming out of your mouth. Do they match? I've told this story before about a young woman being with a friend in a pub, and she was cold, so she had her arms crossed, and she was sitting there with her arms crossed chatting with her friend, and at the end of the night some guy walked by and said, if you want people to approach you and maybe buy you a drink, you should stop being so closed with your body language. Well, she was shocked and surprised, and it was kind of funny. And she wasn't interested in being approached or having a drink bought for her, and she wasn't intending to have closed communication. She had her arms crossed because she was cold. But it's funny, right? Because somebody else interpreted that as this person is unapproachable because she's crossing her arms. Isn't that interesting? So we're communicating all the time, even when we don't know we're communicating. So this is why awareness is really, really important. Do the words coming out of your mouth match your body language? Do they match your paralanguage? And are you aware of all of those things aligning so that when you are communicating with someone, especially in an interview situation, are you being intentional about it? And are you are you sending the messages that you want to send? Because you don't want to self-sabotage yourself. Yes, that does make sense. You don't want to self-sabotage. You want to make sure that it's very clear, and therefore it will be effective. So, if you don't want to go out and do something, wouldn't it be better to say something like, I really don't want to go out again tonight. I will if you want to, but I really don't feel like it. That's a lot more to say, but it's more effective to say than do you want to go out tonight? And your answer is, I guess. Meanwhile, your whole body is screaming, I want my jammies and I want to sit in front of Netflix tonight, right? So why not align your words with your body language, with your paralanguage, and the only way to do that is to be aware of all of that. Have you ever had somebody say to you, why did you say it to me like that? Right? because you've said something, but it's come out with a tone, and the tone has communicated something different than what the words have to whoever's listening, to your friend or whoever you're talking to. So that's important, is awareness. And the third thing is the intentionality. And what I mean by that is check your texts and your emails and your written messages. Check them for spelling and for errors before you hit send. Check with intention before you send that message. And with intentionality, align your body language and your paralanguage before you speak, so that what you are saying matches up with the way that you're saying it. And all of this will lessen the mixed messages, will lessen the confusion of the receiver, will lessen the assumptions that the receiver might make when they see you communicate in a mixed and messed way. Then we all make stories, right? We might make up stories. Well, she said she wanted to, but I could tell she didn't, right? Maybe that's true, maybe that's not true. So how aligned are you in all that you're communicating? Now, when you are in a job search, this is really important. Your resume and your cover letter are written communications, so you want to make sure that they're proofread, that they are not spelled incorrectly, that you've checked the grammar, all that kind of thing. You want to check that, but the resume and the cover letter simply get you in the door for the interview. They sit there with you in the interview, yes, but you have to then communicate. And I talk a lot about avoiding cliches and about how to stand out enough to get you into an interview. But then what? Then you have to prove the excellent communication skills line that you've put on your resume by doing it in all forms of communication as you exchange with the person who wants to interview you. So from the very first phone call or email that you get inviting you in to be interviewed, you must make sure that you are aware and that you are speaking and communicating or writing with intention. And you need to do that when you think about what you're going to wear and what you're going to carry with you and what you're not going to carry with you into the interview, about how you're going to answer the questions and how you're going to follow up with your thank you after the interview. Every single one of those exchanges requires practice and awareness and intentionality in order to be effective. And if you can do that, then you actually deserve to write excellent communication skills on your resume. And it's more than just a tired old blah, blah, blah line that everybody writes. If you can prove it, it means so much more. Because honestly, recruiters and hiring managers and people that look at resumes all day, yeah, there's the excellent communication skills. But we don't believe it until you prove it. And you can prove it quite effectively with one email. Thank you very much. I look forward to meeting you, on such and such a date at such and such a time, or whatever, or the phone call. You can prove it very, very quickly and provide the impression of excellent communication skills at the very start of your job search process. One last thing. You can be a brilliant communicator. You can be effective and excellent. You can do all the right things, and still your intended message can be misinterpreted. And I want to say right now, don't beat yourself up too much, because it's not all on you. All communication is a two-way exchange between the sender and the receiver. And the receiver is receiving your message, your intended message, from the viewpoint of all of their life baggage and all of their perceptions and the particular lenses that they have created through their life experience and beliefs and values. And sometimes it doesn't matter how clearly or how effectively you think you are communicating. What is received is perceived in a way that you didn't intend. And there really isn't a lot you can do about that. If someone is looking for you to be a certain way, if they have an agenda, if they're anticipating or expecting or hoping, then they're going to misinterpret your communication to fit their own expectation, regardless of how the exchange was intended. And those are really unfortunate cases. In those cases, which I hope are rare for you, there's not a lot you can do. What you can do is remain consistent, remain intentional, remain calm, remain aware of how you are communicating, and be as clear as you can possibly be in all your communication with that person and with other people, and try to let go of the interpretations of people who have agendas, because they might not be helpful. In other words, what I'm saying is do your very best with your communication practice and keep practicing, because 99% of the time, if you're doing all of those things, lining everything up and practicing and doing it with awareness and with intentionality, then it's going to work. It's going to be effective. And you will certainly get better and better and more skilled at it the more you practice. So communication, effective communication, is an ongoing practice. You're already doing it. So what areas do you want to work on today? What area of your communication skills would you like to improve upon? Take that one area. It might be listening. It might be not interrupting people. It might be lining up your body language, or making sure your paralanguage is lined up. Or it might be thinking a little bit more before you speak, or it might be double checking your written messaging. Whatever area you would like to work on, you can start doing that today, right now, because there's no time like now to start practicing more and to become a more effective communicator, so that line on your resume is real and is true. Well, that's all for today, I think. And thank you so much for listening today. I really appreciate you spending time with me here listening to this podcast. I was amazed when I was talking the other day with some people about how long this podcast has been running. It's kind of unusual to have a podcast that's been going for 8 years. And so I'm excited about that. I'm happy about that. I'm also really tired. My daughter's wedding was spectacular, and we are tired and happy and excited from that amazing weekend celebration. And I've got a couple of pictures of the Gulf Island that we were on my Instagram feed. If you go to Careers by Jen on Instagram, you can see a couple of pictures of the stunning scenery that is Hornby Island. Never been there before, but what a beautiful part of the world. And I'm always happy to receive communication from you. So if you want to drop me an email, a tweet, a direct message, and also reminding you that we have the Careers by Jen community that you can join on Facebook if you're interested in jumping in and having an exchange there. So I'm happy to communicate with you if you'd like to. And I realize that lots of people, including myself, listen to podcasts all the time and don't interact with the hosts. But I know that as hosts, we all love to hear from you, find out where you are in the world and what you're up to, because it's exciting to us that you honor us with your time. And so if you'd like to, I welcome that. Until next time, take good care. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. You know, if every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.